Welcome to the first speaker series of 2022. My name is Jessica Velasquez and I will be your host tonight. If you're joining us for the first time, Speaker Series is a group of presentations that the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, specifically the congregations of Valley Ridge and Tuscany, put together throughout the year as a service to the community. We've covered topics from personal finances to family history, from grief to personal relationships. And I cannot think of a better topic to start the year than personal happiness. And for that, we brought Brad Harker. So allow me to introduce him first. He's been married to the lovely Shelley Turner Harker for 33 years. They're the parents of three children and three beautiful grandchildren. Brad completed a BA in psychology from the University of Calgary and did graduate work at Brigham Young University, where he completed a PhD in counseling psychology. Brad has been registered as a psychologist in the province of Alberta since 1993 and is currently the Calgary office manager for family services of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. Brad served a mission for the church in the California, Ventura, and San Bernardino missions, and he previously served as a bishop and is now serving on the High Council of the Calgary Young Single Adult State. Brad, welcome, and thank you for being with us tonight.
Hey, thanks, Jessica. I really appreciate that nice introduction. And I'm going to call upon you a little bit later, so don't go to sleep too quickly.
I will be here. I'm going to leave you the stage, and thanks again for being here.
Awesome. Thank you again. So good evening to all of you, and thanks for joining this presentation. The first part of my presentation is somewhat theoretical, so I'll provide the opportunity partway through to ask some questions. Please submit them in the chat box, and the host will select a few, and these might lend to a greater understanding of the topic. So let's go to that first slide now, Scott. And I want to ask each of you, are you happy? We all want to be happy, and yet much of the time we find ourselves struggling, feeling down, discouraged, and wondering why we can't be one of those fortunate, happy people. You know, those people who are perpetually happy and never have a bad day? In my experience, those people that are continuously happy don't really exist. The more I get to know others on a personal level, the more I realize that we all struggle to experience happiness. In fact, life can be quite challenging much of the time. It's my hope, though, that you don't give up on happiness and that you never stop trying to create happiness in your life. I frankly don't know anyone who doesn't want to be happy. So let's go to that next slide. And I'm going to ask, could the very question, am I happy, be part of the problem? Could this question, particularly if we ask ourselves repeatedly, am I happy? Am I happy? Am I happy? Lead us from the very thing that we seek. So let's go to that next slide. What could be wrong with the question, am I happy, when Aristotle, one of the world's most renowned philosophers, taught happiness is the meaning and purpose of life, the whole aim and the end of human existence. And the Dalai Lama says the very purpose of life is to seek happiness. Perhaps some additional ideas can enlarge our perspective. Next slide. So Joseph Smith, the first president of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, commented that happiness is the object of our existence and will be the end thereof if we pursue the path that leads to it. And Eleanor Roosevelt, wife of President Franklin D. Roosevelt, stated, happiness is not a goal. It is a byproduct of a life well lived. Next slide. Jeffrey R. Holland, an apostle in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, stated, if you haven't learned it already, you will learn in the years ahead that most times happiness comes to us when we least expect it and when we're busy doing something else. Happiness is almost always a byproduct of some other endeavor. One of my favorite writers from my university days said, "Happiness is like a butterfly. The more you chase it, the more it will elude you. But if you turn your attention to other things, it will come and sit softly on your shoulder," unquote. So how do we optimize our chance for happiness without pursuing it so directly that we miss it? How do we not squeeze the happiness out of life by focusing on it too much? If we're feeling happy or not, how do we pursue the path that leads to happiness? So not to be too simplistic, but I'd like to suggest that the best chance for happiness is to do what happy people do and to avoid doing what unhappy people do. So let's explore for a few minutes, and please suspend some of the things that you think you know. Just allow yourself to be curious, open, and hopefully accepting of some of what I present. So next slide. It's my hope that after what I share with you today, that you will give consideration to 3 principles that I think will lead you to experience greater happiness. The principles that we will explore together are: 1, happiness is a byproduct of a life well lived. 2, embracing growth and purpose is the path to happiness. And 3, we cannot stop seeking to grow and develop, or we risk the loss of happiness. So let's discuss the first principle, and I will share some concepts that may be new to some of you. As I mentioned, please keep an open mind and allow yourself to remain curious. Next slide. So as a child, I used to love watching the movie star and comic Bob Hope in his on the road movies to somewhere, whether his destination was Rio or Morocco or Bali or some other exotic place. The movies were always full of jokes and fantastical situations that were not likely to happen, such as sinking into quicksand up to your neck and then getting rescued at the last minute. Truth be told, it is not possible to sink past your waist in quicksand. Now imagine with me, if you will, that you come across some quicksand while on a hike somewhere in the wilds of Alberta. Before you notice the quicksand, you've already stepped in it. What would be your natural reaction? That's right, you would probably try to pull your foot out or feet out. And you would notice that the more that you struggle, the deeper you sink into the quicksand. It is the struggle that causes you to sink and get more and more stuck. To get out of quicksand, it would be important to do what might seem counterintuitive, and that is to lay down, disperse your weight, open your whole body out so that you don't sink any deeper. Yes, you would get dirty and it would be uncomfortable, but that would prevent you from sinking further into the sand. Then a rescue can be made by slowly wiggling your feet out of the sand and then rolling out or having someone assist you out. Now, quicksand is a natural physical trap where the more we struggle, the more we get stuck. Dr. Russ Harris has written an important book that I will refer to tonight called The Happiness Trap. In his book, he describes ways that mentally and emotionally we can feel trapped. And the more we struggle, the more mentally and emotionally we feel stuck. I ask you, who doesn't feel unhappy when they feel trapped or stuck? Next slide, please. So, getting more specific now, Dr. Harris suggests that a couple of common ways that we can get mentally or emotionally trapped are: 1, through cognitive fusion, a fancy way of saying that our thoughts dominate or control our behavior. Basically, our thoughts become very sticky, hard to let go of, almost like they're Velcroed to our mind. We become entangled with our negative thoughts. The second way we get stuck is called experiential avoidance. We engage in experiential avoidance when we put great effort to avoid unpleasant emotions or thoughts. This is often done through efforts to distract ourselves from what we're thinking or feeling, or through opting out of activities or events that could create positive opportunities and experiences. But by opting out, we come up with all sorts of excuses to avoid participating and give in to our fears. We often unconsciously deem that it's better to distract or avoid than to feel uncomfortable. These two traps create kind of an emotional quicksand. So let's invite Jessica, our host, to join me on the screen, and we'll get rid of the content. And I want Jessica, if she's willing, to help us to learn more about these traps by participating in an exercise that Dr. Harris uses to illustrate these concepts. So Jessica, I can't hear you right now, so need to unmute.
There we go.
All right, great. Now, are you willing?
As long as it doesn't involve any singing or dancing.
No singing or dancing. This is
Okay.
going to be fairly painless.
Okay.
And you won't be revealing anything personal about yourself.
Sure.
So, first of all, Jessica, if you could identify 3 objects that you can see in the room and say them out loud. And I haven't done anything previously with Jessica. She doesn't know what we're doing. So go ahead and say those 3 objects, Jessica.
Television, phone, and chair.
Okay, so these objects will represent the people and the places and the activities that are important to you. So the telephone and the TV and a chair.
Okay.
So now I've asked Jessica if she would have a book. And so let's just have her grab that book and hold it landscape style. Yeah, just like that. No, yep. And imagine, Jessica, that this book represents everything inside of you, all the difficult thoughts, feelings, memories, body sensations that you may have struggled with over the years.
All of a sudden is very heavy.
Yes, it's already getting heavy, isn't it? Now, I'd like you to hold it up in front of your face so you can't see me anymore and bring it right close to your nose, almost touching. Now, what's it like to have this conversation with me while you're all caught up with those thoughts and feelings?
It's very hard to have this conversation. All I can see are my thoughts and feelings and emotions.
Do you feel connected with me or engaged with me? Are you able to read the expression on my face, read my body language? How well can you see those things, those objects that represent the people and places and activities that are important to you?
I can't see them at all.
So Jessica, keep that up there. And while you're completely absorbed in all that stuff going on inside, you're missing out on a whole lot. You're disconnected from the world around you, and you're disconnected from me. Notice too that while you're holding on so tightly to your thoughts and feelings, that you can't do the things that make life work. While holding that clipboard so tightly, if I asked you to cuddle a baby or hug a person you love, or drive a car, or cook dinner, or type on a keyboard, could you do any of those things?
No, I could not.
Yeah, so okay, let's put that book down on your lap. And so they're not going away, all those things inside of you, those thoughts and feelings and memories and body sensations. But while you're so caught up in all that stuff, not only do you lose contact with the world around you, but you disconnect from relationships, and you also become incapable of doing the things that make your life work. Now, there's something else that I want to demonstrate here. And would you take that book now and hold it out in front of you and just push it as far away from you as you can? In fact, hyperextend your arms and keep pushing. Extend those arms and push those thoughts and those feelings. Hold both arms. Let's not let go of that book, because you're holding on tightly to those feelings and memories and body sensations. And now we've only been going for a few seconds, but how would you feel after doing a whole day of this?
Well, I have a better view.
Yeah.
But I don't have a full view of the room.
Yeah. Are you getting kind of tired? Are your arms getting tired?
Yeah.
A little harder
I
to
couldn't hold
focus?
this for a long time.
Yeah, and if I asked you now to type on a keyboard, or drive a car, or cuddle a baby, hug someone you love, couldn't do it, right?
I still couldn't do it.
Okay, and that is, interesting. What's it like having this conversation with me while you're holding that book?
If I put it right in front of me like that?
No, you can stay the other angle.
Okay.
How's it having that conversation?
Well, I guess I could hear you and talk to you, but it's still awkward and uncomfortable and not very
Okay.
pleasant.
All right. So let's have you place that book on your lap and let it just sit there. Now, isn't that a lot less effort? It's as
Absolutely.
if you're allowing your thoughts and feelings and everything going on inside of you just to be there. We'll just allow all that stuff to be there without fighting them, without getting entangled with them. We know all that internal stuff is never going to disappear. We all have uncomfortable feelings, weird or troublesome thoughts, difficult memories, some body pain. Now, how are your shoulders and your arms right now?
Much better.
Yeah.
Free.
Notice, Jessica, that you're free now to invest in doing something with some energy and constructive. You could give someone a hug, or you could go play the piano, or maybe cuddle a baby. So thank you, Jessica. I appreciate you being willing to do this exercise with me. And I imagine that, maybe we've learned a few things from this. Let's just also ask before we finish off here, do you still have, or now do you have a clear view of the objects in the room, of the telephone and the television and the chair?
I sure do.
You can
Yeah.
take it all in, even while you're, holding those thoughts and feelings.
Yeah.
And, they're
They're
still
still
there.
here.
Yeah. But notice all of that is having less impact on you. And in an ideal world, you'd just throw that book away. But here's the thing. You've been trying to do that for years. We all have. If you're like most people, you clearly put a lot of time and effort into trying to get rid of uncomfortable thoughts and feelings. And yet, despite all that effort, they're still showing up. They're still here today. Some of those things that you might do to make some of that stuff go away might work for a short time, but they soon come back. And sometimes when we fight or battle those difficult thoughts and feelings, they just get bigger and heavier than ever. Could that be true, Jessica?
I agree with that.
Okay, so I'm almost done with you, but here's the approach that I'm going to define in just a minute and what it's all about. You can learn some skills, sometimes we might call them mindfulness skills, that will allow you to handle painful thoughts and feelings far more effectively in such a way that you will have much less impact, or they'll have much less impact over you. So instead of holding the book in front of your face or pushing the book away, you can put the clipboard or the book in your lap and just let it go. And notice this not only allows you to be connected with the world and to engage in what you're doing, but it also frees you to take effective action. When you're no longer struggling with this stuff or absorbed in it or holding on to it, you're free. You're free to put energy into doing the things that are important to you. Okay, thanks, Jessica. Appreciate you helping out. Now, what I'm talking about is an approach to life called ACT. And it's really about creating a rich and meaningful and full life while accepting the pain that goes along with it. It also includes some skills to facilitate effective action. Now, I'm guessing that if this demonstration resonated for you, where you recognize that you sometimes or often get stuck or get fused with thoughts or feelings such that you go to great lengths to avoid your inner feelings, well, you might be wondering, how do I not get fused with my inner experience? Or how do I learn to not avoid this inner experience and just let it be there? So time doesn't permit us going into too much depth, but let me share a couple of ideas with you. I will also add that if you want to research further, I invite you to get a book called The Happiness Trap, or you can read about ACT on the web, on the internet. You can look at videos to kind of familiarize yourself with it. But it is helpful to learn to have a different relationship with our thoughts so that they are not as important. To become diffused, unstuck, or less hooked by our thoughts. What is important, as we will discuss more later, is to learn to act on our values despite negative or uncomfortable thoughts, emotions, memories, or body sensations. So let's go to slide number, the next slide, actually, if you would, Scott. So let's just go to the next one after that. That's it. As I mentioned, much of what I've shared so far comes from a therapeutic approach referred to as ACT, acceptance and commitment therapy, of which Dr. Russ Harris is a specialist. Stephen Hayes and some of his colleagues were the founder of ACT. And A stands for acceptance, C for commitment or choice, and T for taking action. And these might be a little bit of my take on it, but that's what you'll have to go with tonight. Now, the goal of this approach is not happiness. Let me repeat, the goal of this approach is not happiness. The goal of this approach is to learn how to better act consistent with our values, trusting that happiness, peace, joy, and satisfaction will follow. But we act even when we don't feel settled or comfortable. This process creates the psychological flexibility that allows us to be much more resilient. So acceptance is really learning that our thoughts and feelings are often not that significant. And when we overfocus on them, we tend to get stuck or hooked by our thoughts and feelings. We then may develop elaborate rituals to avoid thinking and feeling that may present as distractions, addictive behaviors, opting out to avoid feeling uncomfortable. We may get on the overthinking hamster wheel or use substances or activities that dull our senses and yet end up creating dependency on them. Commitment and or choice is the ability to choose what we will do, to be committed to what we will do without letting our thoughts and feelings get in the way. And taking action in ACT stands, of course, for acting on our values, the developed ability to ensure that our behavior is consistent with our values. Next slide, please. So we're going to try a diffusion exercise together, or a method that you can practice every day to help you to learn to let go of sticky thoughts. So I encourage everyone to put their pens down and try this one out. You won't regret it. And I'm going to have Jessica do this, and then we'll debrief with her, but she doesn't need to come on screen until a little bit later. So that's fine there. So we're going to do a little exercise called Leaves on the Stream. And so what I would like each of you to do, if you're comfortable, is to close your eyes and just push your feet into the floor and feel the back of the chair against your back and on your legs. And now I would like you to let your mind drift and imagine that you are hiking on a nice warm autumn day in the mountains, and you're with a group of friends, but you've kind of got a little bit separated from them, and you can hear them over there, but you're pretty separate. And you're coming across a beautiful mountain stream. And it's not a large stream, but it's got water flowing through it pretty quickly, and it's flowing over the rocks, and you're enjoying the sounds of the water as it goes over the rocks and the babbling sound of a stream. And you're noticing how beautiful the day is as the sky is framed by all of these leaves that are turning different colors. There's some orange leaves and some yellow leaves and some red ones, some brown ones, and even still some green ones on the trees. And what you're noticing is that they're falling into the stream one by one. And magically, as a leaf falls into the stream, your thought is written on that leaf. And so each leaf that falls into the stream has your thoughts written on it, one by one. And you're just letting those leaves flow right on down the stream. And you might be having thoughts like, I can hardly wait to have ice cream after this is over, or how long is this going to be, or, the kids are making a noise in the other room, or this chair isn't that uncomfortable that I'm sitting with, or this is kind of, capturing my attention. Could be any one of those thoughts. And just let those thoughts come and go as they are written on the leaves and floating down the stream. So stay in that setting in your mind. And I'm going to give you 1 minute to be able to just focus on letting leaves with your thoughts on them float down the stream. Okay. Well, when you're ready, you can allow yourself to come back into whatever room you're in and leave that scene and focus back on the presentation. And I will invite Jessica now onto the screen. And Jessica, can you just tell me a little bit about your experience with the leaves on the stream? And you're muted, Jessica.
Sorry about that.
No problem.
I got into it. I could feel the stream and the breeze and the leaves falling, and I had to choose my thoughts, the ones I want to let go. And it was interesting. It was very interesting because I don't think about letting go of thoughts that often. So it was interesting.
Yeah. So what I might encourage you to do is to try that out again, maybe a few times, and then just let every thought go. Don't hold on to any thoughts, and just allow the thoughts to come and go. Yeah.
Like good and bad thoughts.
Good and bad, any thought.
Everything.
Yep. It helps you learn to become disconnected or defused from your thoughts.
Okay.
Because oftentimes we get really fused with our thoughts, and it's a hard time. We have a hard time kind of finding a way not getting stuck. And so this allows you then to defuse or to get unstuck easier when thoughts arise that are sometimes difficult.
Hard because then thoughts just rush into one's mind, and
yeah.
that's a lot of leaves.
Yes, and it is a lot of leaves, and you'll find that it actually slows down the process the more you practice it. Slows down your thoughts so that you feel like I'm not, so pressured. So thank you, Jessica, for that feedback. It'd be nice to do feedback with everybody, but we don't have that opportunity. But let's go to the next slide, and thank you. So what Dr. Harris explains about this idea of cognitive diffusion is that we look at thoughts rather than from thoughts. So we're actually, there's two minds, so to speak. There's the mind that we're in, and then the observing mind. And we're kind of just stepping back and being more objective and looking at our thoughts rather than from our thoughts. And we notice thoughts rather than becoming caught up in them. And we're letting thoughts come and go rather than holding on to them. So just as I mentioned with Jessica, I encourage you to practice leaves on the stream. This is just one of many ways that we can learn to better let go of sticky thoughts, leaving us less mentally and emotionally encumbered and better able to act on our values and work towards the goals that are important to us and consistent with our values. So let's go to the next slide. And what I'm going to talk about now is some mindfulness or grounding exercises to bring your focus back to the task at hand, when you seem to be getting stuck or hooked by your thoughts. And so what we're looking at is how to overcome experiential avoidance now. We talked about getting rid of cognitive fusion with cognitive diffusion, and now we're learning how to overcome experiential avoidance. And again, we want to develop a different relationship with our emotions or thoughts through mindfulness exercises. Now, mindfulness in this context is not the kind where you might envision yourself meditating for hours on the top of some mountain with no allowance for distraction. But I like to refer to it simply as the ability to pay more attention with more curiosity and openness. It means slowing down to really notice what you're doing, focusing in a relaxed, easy way. So if I could ask Jessica to join me again on screen for a short demonstration. Let's do a mindfulness experiment together. And we can also refer to this as getting grounded, getting out of our mind traps and into our body and thinking brain. So everyone can do it while I'm doing it with Jessica. So put your pens down, push your feet into the floor, feel the back of the chair against your back and your legs. And I'd like you, Jessica, to look around the room and just identify and say out loud 4 items that you can see.
I can see a lamp, a necklace, a handbag, and a pillow.
Now, can you say 3 things that you can hear right now or that you've heard just recently?
I can hear your voice, I can hear the fan, and I can hear a little bit of our neighbors talking.
Okay. Now reach out and touch 2 things and tell me what you're touching and what the sensation is or the.
My right hand is touching the book on my lap, which is flat and smooth.
Okay.
My left hand, and my right hand is touching the chair right beside me, and it's made out of wood, so it's hard
Okay.
and solid, and it has sharp angles.
All right. And now tell me one thing either that is a body sensation inside or that you can feel inside.
It could be an external, like I'm a bit cold, or
Yeah, that's great. That's great. So
okay.
you're feeling kind of cold. So this is just a simple technique, but it can bring us back into the present. How focused are you on me right now that I've had you ground yourself, Jessica?
I am focused, but I'm also wondering. I'm focusing on the things that I was touching and feeling and
Yeah.
hearing. I'm a
Yeah,
little bit.
this is kind of newish, isn't it?
It is like I'm more aware of what's around me.
So just for example, if you're in a meeting or if you're in a social situation and you're all of a sudden caught up in a lot of worries and a lot of concern and you've got that maybe inner critic going or whatever, that's a time when you can ground and kind of get back into your full thinking mind or just get more present. Another quick thing that you can do is you can just, quickly look around the room and identify 4 or 5 colors. Say, I'm seeing blue, red, yellow, orange, and purple. And then we're slowing things down a little bit and we're able to focus back again on what we're doing. Some people also use breathing to, slowing down their breathing, taking deeper breaths to get grounded.
Could you
Now,
repeat what you said at the beginning? It's 4 things I can see.
3 things
3
I
things.
can hear, 2 things I can touch, and 1 thing I'm feeling inside, either a feeling or a body sensation.
Very good. Thank you.
Okay, and so if we can go to that next slide. So mindfulness, the ability to pay attention with more curiosity and openness. It's slowing down to notice what you're doing, focusing in a relaxed and easy way. So it's probably wouldn't hurt to mindfully stroll through the hills of Tuscany in Calgary, and even better, the Tuscan landscapes of Italy. So let's go to that next slide. This is a word on avoiding. And this is healthy when we avoiding. In other words, if our life has been ruled by avoidance, if we avoid things that make us feel uncomfortable, then we're missing out. If we can learn to identify our values and act on them with small steps and goals, despite how we feel, then we are on our way to avoiding, acting on our values and creating the rich, full, meaningful life that we all desire. Next slide, please. Many of you recall your first public speaking experience while you were waiting nervously for your turn to speak. You have all sorts of uncomfortable thoughts, feelings, and body sensations that were encouraging you to probably run out of the room so you could get out of that feeling that was so uncomfortable. Somehow you persevered and gave the talk. What miraculously likely happened is that not long after you started speaking and saw that you were doing it and that you could do it, those negative thoughts, feelings, and body sensations just kind of seemed to float into the background. You were avoiding and learning to act on your goals and values despite the uncomfortable signals that your mind and body were sending. You were acting instead of reacting. I'm sure you felt some satisfaction and happiness after that success. So to summarize, what does all this have to do with happiness? Well, as Russ Harris suggests, we often get caught in the happiness trap. Next slide. Many of us long for days when we were metaphorically wrapped in the warm and comforting embrace of a loved one, or those halcyon days of our youth where we ran freely in our neighborhood, or on vacation without a care in the world. Then the world was just right. No worries, no pain, no obstacles, nothing to hold us back. These types of thoughts, although pleasant and with nothing inherently wrong with them, may lead us into a trap. That trap being, if I can just recapture these same old comfortable feelings and hang on to them, then I can relax and all will be right again. Then I can get back to living. Next slide. So those thoughts are nice, but they don't allow us to get on with life. We're caught in the snares of the happiness trap. We all mistakenly believe that when I graduate, then I'll be happy. Or when I get married, that's when true happiness comes and will stay. Or when I have children, then it'll all work itself out and I can relax and enjoy. Or when I get that new job, or that raise, or get better, or feel better physically. It is all a trap, as the feelings come and go just as easily. We are happy, and then we're not. And then we wonder what happened. So to conclude this section, I hope you will recognize that our thoughts and feelings often betray us. They're often meaningless and not very helpful. Next slide, please. As we learn that happiness is a byproduct of a life well lived, we will focus on acting on our values, aligning our behavior with our values, and finding that peace and happiness follow the actions we take. Rather than always checking our pulse, metaphorically speaking, checking to see if we're feeling right or feeling motivated, we can surrender the need for emotional control. Accept feelings are just feelings and not dictates and directions that we somehow must obey or act on or resolve to do. Rather, we should regularly be asking ourselves, am I acting consistent with my values? This will guide us to engage in behavior that over time will result in feelings of fulfillment. If you regularly ask of yourself, two things are likely to happen. Negative and painful thoughts and feelings are likely to drift into the background, even though that's not the goal. That oftentimes happens. And two, We engage in the process of creating a rich, full, meaningful life that will inevitably result in happiness landing on our shoulder, just like a butterfly might. If we don't try to catch, control, or hold too tightly to our inner experience, so we take the focus off of ourselves and develop the skills to better and better act consistent with our values, we can then just enjoy the journey. So let's just take a few moments to answer any questions, if there's any questions at this point. And then I probably have about 7 to 10 minutes to talk about those last couple of principles. So any questions that anyone would like to raise?
We do have one here.
Okay.
How do you let go of those negative thoughts and feelings?
Okay, so good question. I think we talked about leaves on the stream as a good example, and some grounding exercises as good examples of ways to let go of negative thoughts and feelings. One of the things that we oftentimes do is when a negative feeling comes up, it's kind of like we tend to want to go to war against it or battle with it. And you'll find, just like the bully around or down the street, that as you keep thinking about the bully and keep trying to figure things out, the bully just gets bigger and bigger. But as you learn to walk away from the bully, that can be helpful. Sometimes it's like we're trying to slay a fire-breathing dragon, and we want to get out a sword, and if I could just cut the head off of that fire-breathing dragon, then I'm not gonna have any problems in my life. But if you just took a different tack, and that was just turn around and walk the other way, then what happens is the fire-breathing dragon gets smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller, and we're better able to focus on those things that are important to us. Remember that thoughts are just thoughts, feelings are just feelings, and most of them are pretty meaningless. And we don't need to give so much attention to our thoughts and so much focus on what we're feeling, but rather to just start to say, well, what did I want to do today? What's consistent with my values? And how can I do that? How can I develop the skills to do that more often? So that's probably a longer response than you wanted, but that's a thought. Any follow-up on that?
There is one follow-up, and I also have a question. Let's go first here to the comments. I work with you every day. If they say they're not happy, at what point should I recommend professional help? Oh, I work with youth
Yes.
every day.
Yes.
Sorry about that. If they
Yeah.
say they're not happy, yeah.
So great question. Most teenagers are in a pretty common state of being unhappy or dissatisfied because they're trying to figure out a lot of things. And it's, it can be pretty overwhelming to be going through all the transitions that teens go through. So they're going through a series of losses and a series of things they need to grieve because friends come and go, and they have experiences where they try something and it doesn't work out so well. So we don't want to jump too quickly to say that someone is mentally ill or not coping. But when we see a change in appearance, a dramatic change in appearance, or a dramatic change in behavior, or when we see them start to isolate excessively, and it's pretty normal for teens to want to isolate, but when it becomes excessive and they're kind of, maybe cutting off some friends and cutting off some associations, then it might be helpful to start to ask them questions, and it could be appropriate to refer them at that point. But unhappiness is a common experience for all of us, and it's learning that as we act consistent with those things that are important to us, that happiness and good feelings oftentimes seem to follow us, and we don't have to seek them so directly. And maybe just one more. Oh, go ahead, Jessica.
As you were speaking, I was just thinking about the differences between, somebody feeling unhappy and feeling not satisfied, and how do you differentiate? How do you come up with the difference? Okay, what you're feeling is unhappiness and
Yeah,
not.
and maybe the difference between what's depression and what's unhappiness. And
Mhm.
unhappiness is very common and very regular. Depression is when we see a certain number of symptoms that extend over a 2-week period of time, and it'd be things like feeling sad all the time, lacking energy, not having an appetite, crying more than usual, wanting to withdraw from people, and a few others. So we're looking for symptoms that extend for at least a 2-week period of time that are quite different from what we've experienced previously.
That's a very, very good suggestion. Do we have time for two more questions?
Sure.
Okay, how can a person deal with chronic unhappiness that seems to be a result of the actions of another person?
Okay, so acceptance of, as we've talked about it, doesn't necessarily mean that we always have to stay doing the same things, or not address some things in a relationship. So if there's a situation with someone that you're maybe married to, we'll use that as an example, where there's chronic unhappiness, it's probably a good idea to reach out to a third party. Uh, and maybe that third party can help identify some resources that can help. Because sometimes we just get stuck in patterns that are pretty difficult to get out of on our own. Um, and when it's something that is outside of our control, when it's someone else's behavior or someone else's actions, if we twist ourselves into a pretzel to always say, what can I do to make this person happy? Then oftentimes what that does is it just lends to more unhappiness. And so allowing other people to be responsible for their behavior and us being responsible for our behavior. And then when we're in a committed relationship and things aren't going well, it's reaching out to a third party to maybe help to see if there might be some tools or some interventions or some ideas that could help change the dynamics.
Yeah, I guess that's because we're too close to the situation and we need a more objective view on what's happening.
Nice. Yes, that's a good way of putting it.
And before I go to the last comment, I wanted to ask you talked about, when we have those negative thoughts, just try to not keep them present in our minds or having them control our actions. But what's the difference between, or is there a fine line, I guess, between doing that and avoiding, like you mentioned?
Yeah, experiential avoidance. Yeah, where we just kind of distract ourselves, and so we're wanting to try to stay present as much as we can. That's an important part of being psychologically flexible, is to be where we're at when we're there. And so when we're with other people, if we can stay present with those, and so I guess the two risks that we talked about earlier are either getting stuck with our thoughts or
Hmm.
just avoiding and just shutting down or distracting or those types of things. And so it's hard to give a short answer to this, but one thing so that we don't get stuck with our thoughts or fused with our thoughts is to practice things like leaves on the stream and grounding and learning to, be a bit more present where we're at. And in terms of experiential avoidance, we want to be open to developing skills that will help us to do more of what matters. So if we have a hard time maybe doing our homework, or maybe being as reliable at work, then it's important, if we do this with ourselves or maybe with somebody else, to do some problem solving, to develop a plan that we could maybe say, why don't I try a couple of small things that can shift me into doing things differently? We're developing new and better habits. We're developing a different system, if you will, so that we can better do the things that matter. That's, it's skill development. That's being more self-reflective. It's looking at yourself and saying, what is it that is maybe standing in the way of me doing the things that I normally do? Do I need to develop a little different plan or a little different system? And if I can't do that on my own, maybe I can talk to my partner, or maybe I can talk to a friend, or talk to a parent, or, sometimes counseling can be helpful.
Very good. I have one last comment here from Grayson. I think a lot of people expect too much. Look how much better our lives are compared to those who have to struggle for food and shelter every day.
Nice comment. Yeah. So sometimes just looking at our expectations realistically is very helpful to help us to realize how much we do enjoy and how much we do have. So
Agreed.
thanks for those great questions. So let's just go into the last part of the presentation, and going to share some brief comments related to the second and third principles that we talked about. So a second characteristic of happy people is they embrace growth and purpose. So I'd like to share with you a story about one of my heroes, and her name is Elizabeth, and she happened to be the mother of one of my best friends when I was a boy. One Sunday morning when I was about 8 years old, our family were sitting at the dinner table having breakfast, and the phone rang. And my father got up from the table to answer the phone, and it was one of those moments that stays with you forever. He became ashen-faced, and his voice became very solemn. And he thanked the caller, hung up the phone, and he informed the family that my best friend's father was killed in a car accident that morning. And we all asked questions about what happened, and these were questions that my father couldn't immediately answer. It was devastating. How could this be? At the same time of this tragic accident, my mother lay dying a slow death in an auxiliary hospital. She struggled for years to stay alive so that she could raise her 4 children. Prior to her husband's untimely death, Elizabeth had taken me under her wing, inviting me over on a regular basis to play with her son. Now, as an adult, I understand now that she was trying to take the burden off of my 70-year-old grandmother, who had come in and taken over the role as a mother figure, while my father worked to support the family and then visited my mother in the hospital as much as he could. The wonder of it all is that the invitations from Elizabeth and her son to come over and play didn't stop for me after the death of her husband. I was still regularly invited over to add more chaos to my friend's home. In her grief, Elizabeth continued to think of others and looked for ways to support those around her. I was the beneficiary of this kind and generous woman. She and her family moved away not too many years after that, but in the intervening years, when I would bump into her after that, she would remind me that I still claim your big toe, and how pleased I was that she would jokingly claim a part of me. She knew how to have fun and continue to care. Elizabeth went on to teach elementary school in a small town that she had moved to with her children, and those students sung her praises. At the age of 80, she served a mission for the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints at a church historical site in the U.S. And when I visited that historical site with my wife, we were surprised to bump into Elizabeth. We were in town for a couple of days, and we came to find out that she was a legend amongst the other missionaries. In her advanced age, many had a hard time keeping up with her. She was assigned to a historic home where a ladder was used to go into the upper floor, and she went up and down it regularly. The other missionaries spoke very highly of her as she continued to bless and sacrifice for others in her own extremities, now a widow 2 times over. I never heard anyone that didn't express how she was an example of love and service. Elizabeth was a woman who was happy And it was because, I believe, she embraced growth and purpose. Let's go to the next slide. Now, let me pose this question for your consideration. How would we learn to appreciate being happy, content, comfortable, or loved if we never felt unhappiness, loneliness, confusion, dissatisfaction, being uncomfortable, or feeling unloved? Adversity or opposition strengthen us, and happy is the person that embraces the challenges they face and uses them to grow. Do you think Elizabeth was having fun? Certainly not all the time, but I think she had a lot of it. Do you think she was embracing a philosophy of life that would bring her great satisfaction and peace? You bet. Here is a woman that acted on her values and reaped the rewards of this mindset. I think if she allowed her thoughts and feelings to dominate her, she would have given up and given in. But she got on with life, and her behavior matched her values. She engaged in committed action, consistent with what was important to her. Next slide. Albert Schweitzer was awarded the Nobel Prize in 1952 for his altruism and philanthropic efforts. As we consider how a life filled with purpose is central to a happy person's life, consider his statement. I don't know what your destiny will be, but one thing I know, the only ones among you who will really be happy are those who have sought and found how to serve. And then he said, the only thing of importance when we depart will be the traces of love that we have left behind. Next slide. Elder Jeffrey R. Holland added, if my life has taught me anything, it is that kindness and pleasantness and faith-based optimism are characteristics of happy people. From the words of Mother Teresa, let no one ever come to you without leaving better and happier. Be the living expression of God's kindness, kindness in your face, kindness in your eyes, kindness in your smile. The next slide. And consider what Venerable Bede, one of the greatest scholars of the Anglo-Saxon period, stated. I was no longer the center of my life, and therefore I could see God in everything. Now, the third and last characteristic that I wanted to mention of happy people is the understanding that growth doesn't end when this life ends, but continues on to another existence. Next slide. King Benjamin, Book of Mormon prophet, testified of the blessings and happiness that come to those who carefully follow the Savior. He said, and moreover, I would desire that ye should consider on the blessed and happy state of those that keep the commandments of God. For behold, they are blessed in all things, both temporal and spiritual. And if they hold out faithful to the end, they are received into heaven, that thereby they may dwell with God in a state of never-ending happiness. Now, it is interesting that in 2005, Dr. Marilyn Bates out of the University of Saskatchewan surveyed nearly 37,000 people and found that people who regularly attend church, synagogue, or other religious services are less likely to suffer from depression and other psychiatric illnesses than those who don't. The study suggested that the higher the worship frequency, the lower the odds of depression, mania, and panic disorders. This study was presented at the annual meeting of the American Psychiatric Association and argued that the findings add to a growing body of evidence that faith may positively impact your mental well-being. Bates commented in response to her research findings that going to church may be a proxy for social support. And studies show social support is protective against both physical and mental illness. She also noted that higher spiritual values seem to protect against the risk of substance abuse. Men and women who reported a greater sense of meaning in their lives were significantly less likely to have alcohol and drug problems. Spirituality is dramatically important to avoiding the destructive pattern of alcohol and drug abuse, Bates said. So happy people take the long view and determine what their values are from the long view. Valuing God and his plan for our happiness can lead to increased happiness, meaning, and purpose in life, and greater happiness in the world to come. So in conclusion, I hope that you will let go of happiness as your goal. Rather, it is my wish for you to seek to create a life well lived, embrace growth, and improve your relationship with God, our Father. I believe that seeing happiness as a byproduct of a life well lived will change your life for the better. Rather than asking yourself, am I happy? You could ask yourself, am I doing the things that will create a rich, full, meaningful life? And is my behavior consistent with my values? Then you will see happiness landing on your shoulder more often. And those happy moments or less frequent bursts of happiness will surely accompany the life that is a well-lived life. I close with the challenge to stop asking yourself, am I happy? And spend more time evaluating and asking yourself if your behavior matches your values. Take action on those values, create purpose in your life, and then enjoy the life that you're creating. And I say that in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
Thank you, Brad. I was taking notes, and I really love what you said, that happiness is a byproduct of a life well lived. Thank you so much. I wonder if we have more questions here. Do we have time for one more? Well, there's a comment here from Grayson. He said, great presentation.
Hey, thanks, Grayson. Do you know, I'm seeing that our producer is saying that we probably shouldn't ask for questions because we're running long. But I just thank everyone for the opportunity to present and to be invited. And Jessica, thanks so much for your willingness to participate in the presentation.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I leave with a lot of lessons to help me stay focused and present and let go of those leads. So thank you so much. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Stay tuned for more speaker series that we'll be hosting throughout the year. And Brad, once again, thank you so much.
Okay, thanks. Bye, everyone.